reacted. He lunged after a dog. I got yanked out of my chair. Chair went away. I went the other way. This is the reason why I can make this video, is because I have survived and I learned an upward hill battle journey to dealing with his reactive behavior. My name's Ian. Welcome to Mobility K9. Up to the age of 45, I've never actually had a dog. I grew up with a couple of dogs when I was younger with my parents, but I never actually participated in the upbringing of that dog. I might have at like 12 years old poured one bowl of kibble. I met a friend and she had a dog. She was in an electric wheelchair and I came along her side through a journey of, and that itself was a journey. I came along with her and I ended up helping, and then I ended up being her assistant with dog responsibilities. Because of her mobility challenge, being in an electric wheelchair and me not being in an electric wheelchair, I am a lot more mobile than she was for certain activities like picking up the waste, dog's waste. So I was essentially, I came into the situation as the glorified dog waste disposal unit, as it were. Her dog was a very wonderful dog, but he was all bark. And when he barked, everyone heard it from a mile away. And he barked at anything that had a pulse, at least perceptively. So I learned how to handle the reactivity in that way. As a result of her experience, or as a result of my experiences working with her and her dog, I started to wonder, could I get my own dog? Because up to meeting her, by the way, I should have mentioned this, up to meeting her, I kind of held to the view that I wasn't really qualified to have a dog because of my mobility challenge. I reasoned that if I was to get a dog, I would have to, like everyone else, be responsible with the dog. I couldn't just say, well, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't handle winters very easily. So I'm sorry, Mr. Dog, Mrs. Dog, you're going to have to stay in the entire winter. I can't do that. So I would have to be able to tackle the world physically with a dog on tow. And I couldn't also go to a court of law and say, well, but Your Honor, yes, my dog got away from me and hurt someone, or my dog got away from me and hurt himself, but I'm in a wheelchair. What do you expect me to do? The answer is simple: don't get a dog. That was my reasoning. And there was a time in college where I had an opportunity to get a service dog, but I could not do that in good conscience because I felt that I didn't need a service dog. Essentially, a service dog is not just a well-trained dog. A service dog is a dog with a university degree. And so it costs a lot of money. And also, put that aside, if I was to take a service dog, it would be primarily just to have him as a companion, a pet. And I wouldn't need to utilize his or her services that they were trained to do, which also took that service away from someone else who could actually use those services. So I couldn't justify saying, sure, I would love to have a dog, thank you. Although I would have loved to have a dog, I just couldn't do that under those circumstances. And then add insult to injury, I couldn't have a dog because of my own perception that I wasn't qualified to have a dog, because I didn't think I could have a dog responsibly. So if I can't be responsible to have a dog, don't get a dog. That was my logic. But my friend, after having me in her life, had shown me that I am able to look after a dog. I helped her look after hers. So I started to think that maybe I do have the skill sets to look after a dog. A big dog. Her dog was a large breed dog too, as well. And so I started to look at the Humane Society to see what would be the process if I wanted to get my own dog. Because there's a far cry of a difference between getting your own dog and getting a dog that you're just helping with. And there was a time when my friend gave me a chance to go solo. She gave me her dog for a week. And so now I was the canine handler exclusively for everything there was to do with a large breed dog. Reactivity, waste management, you get the idea. And so I looked after her dog, and it came out very well. We all lived happily ever after. We became very good friends, all of us. And I became a lot more confident that I can do this. But then I started to ask myself the question, even though I'm physically capable of doing the deeds of looking after a dog, am I ready to look after a dog up here? Am I ready to commit up here? I struggle with anxiety and depression, like many people do. Um, and I started to question myself and second guess my own abilities to look after my own dog as the primary parent, if you will. And I had questions, I was questioning, but I sought answers. And in light of that individual journey, dealing with my own psychology as well as my own social life, speaking with advice and counsel from other people, I thought, you know what, maybe I am ready. And I am just being anxiety and depression has caused me to have what another friend of mine will call stinking thinking. Here is all the reasons why I shouldn't have a dog. I did not listen to those reasons. And I started to look at getting a dog very seriously. I looked at the websites on the Humane Society and started to look for a dog. However, one of the mistakes that I had made when I had been looking at the shelter website, and I did finally meet the dog to whom you're looking at now, right above my head there, was I made the same mistake that many people made, and that as a first-time canine handler. I judged the canine by the cover. I judged the dog based on what he looked like. He was a sweet dog, very, very handsome looking. He was young. So I had a lot of years ahead. I had a chance to have a lot of years ahead of me with him, but I did not look underneath all that handsomeness that you could see. He was a Rottweiler boxer mixed dog, at least according to the Humane Society. And I did not look at things like temperament and breed DNA. As a result, it was within 2 weeks when I realized that, like my friend's dog, he too was reactive, but he was more in your face reactive as opposed to just making a lot of noise. Now, caveat, we all survived it, but this is the reason why I can make this video, is because I have survived and I learned an upward hill battle journey to dealing with his reactive behavior. And luckily, no one ever got hurt by his reactive behavior because I stepped up to the plate and I really took uh, steps to prevent anyone, canine or human alike, to be hurt by my dog. And my dog and I earned a very positive relationship in my local area because they've seen me take these steps and him succeeding and really bringing down his reactivity and bringing out a more sociable behavior. And now we'll go get back to the journey of the story. One of the common event that I've had in my life with this boy was being sprawled out onto the street, sprawled out onto the sidewalk, because he reacted. He lunged after a dog. I got yanked out of my chair. Chair went one way. I went the other way. And when I said that no one got hurt, that's true, except for me. I'm the only one who got the result of his behavior. And thank goodness I am able to survive it. It wasn't the end of the world. But still, being out of my wheelchair and sprawled out on my back was a reoccurring theme for the first year and a half of our 2+ years together. And those 2+ years, or those year and a half, was when I was trying to learn how to handle and learn about him as a person, if you will, as an individual, but also how to handle his reactivity. One of the other things that I had to overcome, and this is where I'm understanding, is I had a lot of people be very, very during, especially if you were the person, especially if a person has had their dog attacked or attempted to be attacked by my dog, um, that I've had people tell me narratives, various narratives that maybe that I can't have a dog like him. He's too big for me. He's not the right dog for me. Things like this, and you may be thinking, well, based on what I've said thus far, you may be thinking, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I would agree. From that perspective, it makes sense. Coming from the perspective of seeing me sprawled out, maybe he wasn't the right dog for me after all. But there is a rationale for why that's simply not true. He was the right dog for me on multiple ways. His physical size and his strength was important to me because of my physical mobility. But it had this added side effect of my mobility challenge um, was the weak link when it came to his reactivity. But still, I had to deal with narratives. So I had to learn to be compassionate, but also clear with people as to why their views are reasonable but incorrect. One of the ways his reactivity was a benefit to me, I actually wanted to get Minion as a mental health service dog, an emotional support dog, as the fad is out these days. And I wanted to make him be there for me. I wanted to have him there for me for when I go through episodes of like depression and anxiety. Because I had this perception of, dogs are going to come up closer to you because they know your feelings and they want to put their paw on you and go, what's going on? And he was very much that. He was that. So he filled that. He did fill that part out. But his aggression was for me also, or his reactivity rather, was for me also a mental health benefit. How would that have caused me more anxiety, which means not a benefit to my mental health? Yes, but it caused me to put aside me and think about him and get him trained up, get his anxiety, his emotions under control. And then when I taught him how to approach anxiety, things that makes him go anxious, I watched his success. And then I saw, well, maybe that's how I should apply that to myself. Do as I say, and as I will do to me. So essentially, I applied behavior modification, as it's said into the dog world, on myself. So I learned a lot about his anxiety, and as a result, I've learned about my own anxiety. I learned about his reactive behavior and why I, as an anxiety stricken person, why I too am reactive. I have to admit, I'm a reactive canine handler who handled a reactive dog. It's a recipe for disaster or a match made in heaven, depending on how you want to see it. And one of the things that he gave me, mentally speaking, was a purpose to live, a purpose to. He made me confront my depression. He made me confront it and keep that metaphorical dog on a short leash. I wanted to get him on a long leash, if not also off leash times. But I needed to, but I needed to keep my other dog that I've had for many years, my metaphorical dog, depression, keep that on a very short leash. And he gave me a chance to figure out how to do that, so I can help the real dog that was on my side. And so, as a result of him helping me with my depression and my anxiety, I've been able to heal inside. And he also gave me my ultimate love, to be needed. What I needed was to be needed. And he gave me that. Now, he gave me that on virtue of, I guess, being a dog, being someone that I can look after. I could have probably felt that way if I had a cat as well. But that aside, him by my side helped me in immense ways. So he was an emotional support dog. He was in service to me in that way. So here are some lessons I've learned as a canine handler, but also as a canine handler the mobility challenge. Now, these two things I think are relative to just someone who's a canine handler, mobility challenge aside. But these are lessons that I've learned that came in very handy, and not just handy, but important, very important, based on my mobility challenge. That he was my very first priority, not anyone else, not you, not your dog. He was my priority. I had to help him and protect him from himself. As a result, I protected you and your dog from his behavior, but I had to concentrate on serving him as my first priority, as a benefit to him. Others benefited, but he was my priority. And one of the things I learned is the absolute necessity, 100% necessity of loose leash walking. He needed to learn to be disciplined and have a strong mind, a disciplined mind, to stay focused with what we're doing, walking together. I had to learn to teach him to stay with me and offer him benefits and corrections so that he can be disciplined to stay with me and I with him. So I had to correct myself when I did not correct his behavior, and I had to validate and confirm when he's done good, because he needed to learn to stay with me. And as a person with a mobility challenge, a person in a wheelchair, walking beside your dog is absolute necessity. Your dog has to be beside you. If you want your dog to be free to go to the bathroom or go and see a friendly dog, if they're friends, of course, then you got to give them the go-ahead to now be free from work. But until that happens, it's important that your dog stay focused beside you. You do not want your dog up in front, back, or side. Not ahead of you. They're not leading the pack. Can't tell what they're looking at behind you. Some of the mistakes that I made was because I didn't pay attention at times and he was trailing behind me. He wasn't like this. He was, I kind of was here, but he was behind me. And then he gets reacted towards another dog behind me. And now I'm going in that direction, literally up and over out of my chair again. And so it's absolutely important that when we loose leash walk our dogs, that the act is not just to have an easy time here, but it's also you can look at the dog, you can pay attention to what they're doing, because remember, dogs don't speak English. They will communicate to you, but they will communicate to you through body language. So you got to be able to look at them to read their body language to see what they're communicating to you. And also it helps the dog grow a strong, disciplined mind. They're going to be no different than you and I. I can't go and play. I'm at work. I got to stay at work. Now, one of the other things that I had learned was the importance of clarity in communication with Minion. I had to learn to listen to him, pay attention to him. When is he getting revved up? When is he getting excited? When is he just looking to go to the bathroom? You get the idea. When is he looking to do these things? And I had to learn how to communicate to him, not just listen to him, but also to communicate. I'm now talking to him. I don't use English because he doesn't understand English. He speaks canine. So I had to learn how to speak canine. And I had learned how to communicate to him when he has done something good and I want to see more of that behavior. He's done something great, keep it up, good work, versus, okay, that was wrong, man, you shouldn't have done that. So I had to offer a correction. He needs to learn, just like you and I, right, correct versus incorrect behaviors. And so that we can be disciplined and narrow focused and tapered into the reality of what we're doing. Tapered, focused, like an arrow. This is the importance that I had learned, the importance of clarity of communication, but also the importance of good habits. Basically getting myself into the good habit of my own life, disciplining my own life. It's one thing to teach my dog to be self-disciplined in staying with me, but also I had to translate that into my own life and be disciplined so I can be tapered, narrow focused, and tight with what I have to do in my own life with small little tiny things. Small little tiny things that when building together can turn into a big task. I had to learn to discipline myself for that. That just made myself as a canine handler much more strong, because I'm now in that habit with regards to me. Now I can practice that onto him. And another point that I had learned is the importance of interfacing with my society. That is the importance of dealing with the fact that we have to interface with society as we do here in a human world. Minion was a dog. He doesn't come from this country of humanity. He came from his own land, the canine kingdom, if you will. He's now living here in the human kingdom according to human laws, human mores and values. He needs to learn how to find his focuses in light of the human way of doing things. And so I had to take into account that when he interfaces with human beings and other dogs in a human society, they're interfacing with him. So I had to learn how to work together. My role was to constantly concentrate on him, but I had to be equally essentially, even though he was my first priority, I had to be equal in my diligence as a result to be focused on my social dynamic with my world around me, so we can all live happily ever after. And now here is where my mobility challenge has struggled. As I said, I had my fair share of bumps and bruises as a result of his reactive behavior. And so I had to learn how to deal with my actual mobility challenge, not just the concept of a mobility challenge, but the actual challenge that has to do with my physical being. I had to navigate. How am I going to navigate my wheelchair when others are on strong legs and a strong back? They have that ability, and even they struggle with that. They get pulled over, as I did, but sometimes my dog didn't pull me over onto the street. He pulled me into the middle of the street because I'm on wheels. I basically became his fish on his fishing line. So I had to navigate how I'm going to maneuver my own body seated in my chair on the sidewalk, not seated on the sidewalk. I also had to have the challenge of learning my own strengths. Where am I strong? What is my strengths? How can I use my strengths to get at the upper hand in being seated and being able to keep him safe, and also communicated with when he needs to learn you can't do that, but also he needed to learn, hey, you did the great thing. But then there's also my weaknesses and outright disabilities. Now let me define some terms here. A weakness is an ability, but it is a weak link in that chain of ability, if you will. I had to figure out what are my weak links in the chain that I still have the ability to do something, but it's not my strong suit, versus my disability. And if you take that word disability, grammatically speaking, it means not ability. If I'm going to discontinue something, I'm going to not continue something. So if I have a disability, that means I have a not ability. I have things that I am not able to do. And so I had to take into account them as well and work around them. I can't use them, so I got to figure out how to overcome them. Another thing that I had discovered is the navigating around dog training as a craft. I had made calls to various dog trainers, and so far I have seen, from my experience, nothing that teaches dog training from the vantage point of being a person with a mobility challenge. Again, mobility challenge will be relative. You might find it easier to do typical dog training if you are up on your feet and your mobility challenge is bad knees or a bad back. I'm not downplaying that, but you will find it probably easier to fit into that mold, because that's more of the mold than it would be for someone who uses a wheelchair or a walker or walks with crutches and leg braces. I found that I had to almost reinvent the dog training wheel in order to incorporate the wheels that had been that are the replacement of legs. A weak back that has replaced a strong back. Another thing that I had discovered is, what tools do I use? In my journey of dog training, I had dog trainers tell me I should get this kind of harness or that kind of collar or use this tool or that tool. And I listened to them. Who am I to say I don't agree? Because I'm hiring them because they're the dog trainer. I wasn't. So who am I to argue? And so I tried all these tools, but I discovered that because of my mobility challenge, the dog training tool that most people who are walking with two strong legs and a back and have full arms are able to cater to use exclusively for the leash, I couldn't use half of the tools I was advised to use. And then, in fact, it would be dangerous. In fact, it has been dangerous for me to use them on to boot. One of the things I also discovered with regards to tools is I already have a tool that I got to use, my wheelchair. I had to figure out what tools I can use that allows me to be fully at the helm of navigating forward my own self for my own body without having my hands compromised. I found that even though the leash was a thin piece of rope, it still made me compromise. I still felt compromised in my ability to push my chair. It's yet another thing to hold in my hands. And then when we get into topics of like clickers for clicker training, that's yet another thing to hold in my hands. So I found that my hands were just not able to do all the things that your hands are able to do, because your hands, your arms you can concentrate on things like holding leashes and clickers. I got to hold my leash. I got to hold my clicker. I had a lot of things to do with my hands. My hands were everything to me. My legs did nothing. My hands did everything. I only have two hands, but I needed about 8 of them. So I had learned that the correct tools were of absolute necessity. Another thing that I had discovered when it came to my mobility challenge was the issue of clarity and communication. I saw the importance of communication, but doing it is a different thing, because dogs talk a very tactile style of talk. They use body language and they use touch. They use sounds. And so I needed to be able to teach my dog when he's done good and when I need to be able to communicate to him through sounds or through my tugging on the leash, when I need to have him learn, hey, you're going off kilter here, man. I need you to come over here. I need to do so. I'm offering him a correction essentially. And I found that as a mobility challenged person with leashes in my hands and everything else, I didn't know how to juggle 10 different things with my hands. That included communication, which meant communicating to my dog was a challenge. As important as I discovered as it was, doing it was a whole different other thing. So I had to learn how to do that. Here are the solutions, however, to my problems. So all those things I discussed now, I actually found solutions for, at least for the most part. For my physical being that I discussed, the solutions I found was finding the right tools that I can and cannot use. And some of the tools that I had to use were unique. And in fact, one of the tools that I found very helpful in dog training was my wheelchair. My wheelchair became a tool for dog training. I was able to use this wheelchair as a guiding tool for me and for him. And when it comes to the communication struggle that I had to learn how to train him with mobility challenge friendly commands. Meaning I wanted him to do things that aided and benefited me as a person with a mobility challenge, something that you may never have to do because you aren't in my position, or maybe you are in my position, but you have your own strengths that are my weaknesses, or your own weaknesses that are my strengths. So you may not necessarily have to do what I had to do, but that could be my advice to you if you are in a similar situation that I am, is train your dog for mobility friendly commands that play into your disability, so that you can do things like giving him treats and or giving him tisks where needed to, so he or she can learn how to navigate this world as a member of the pack that you had invited him into. And one of the other things that I had to learn, now this is dealing with more of the reactive behavior side, is how to keep myself seated in my chair while keeping society safe from his reactive behavior. One of the things I had to learn was communication with my society. My dog Kit was essentially, I had my dog strapped to basically a very thick leather bracelet around my wrist, which was attached to his leash. So I have my arms able to do this, as opposed to holding the leash and doing this with the leash. I wasn't relying on my wrist to keep in my finger strength. I was relying on my entire arm to steer him like this, and my shoulder strength to steer him when needed. So I had my hands free to push my chair. I also wore a beware of dog sign on my back because I don't have eyes in the back of my head. And so the idea there was that you're walking behind me with your dog, you'll see the beware of dog sign, and you'll go, okay, let's maybe cross the street. And how did that help society? Well, I found that many people don't mind it when they get to decide what they're going to do. They would rather make the decision themselves to go, yeah, let's play it safe here. Let's cross the street ourselves. Let's go back and cross the street, as opposed to me asking them, please cross the street, please cross the street. So it built a good relationship with my neighborhood, because I saw they appreciated me informing them of a potential problem. And then when they backed away, Minion was of no problem most of the time. The only times where my beware of dog sign didn't work was when I had people who were busy on their phones with their dog trailing 3 feet ahead of them while they're checking Facebook or Instagram or TikTok on their phones, not paying attention to the world around them. But I digress. That's for a different video. And lastly, the other thing that I had learned was, when confronted with a dog that I know is coming my way and there's no way to avoid, I knew how to stay in the environment with my dog, so to have and take active charge and say, okay, Minion, we're going to stop and we're going to enjoy the presence of our environment with that dog across the street. And guess what? Neither of us are going to go and react to that dog. I'm not going to get all panicked mode. I'm not going to go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, dog, 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 which is something that I had to learn to stop doing too. I was actually very dog on dog reactive myself. I'm walking down the street for a lot of the time going, oh my gosh, dog, dog, oh my gosh, dog, oh my gosh, there's a dog coming. I'm just as dog reactive as he was. So him and I had to learn to be in the environment together and not be dog on dog reactive. And this is one thing I had learned, to be able to have enough space between me and another dog that's coming in my direction, so that my dog could get a see for that dog, watch that dog, be aware of that dog, and then learn to be with me instead of reacting to that dog. Instead of having me hightail it away and not giving my dog a chance to see the dog and not react. And there'd be times where he did see that dog and he did react after that dog, but I was in my chair and ready to stop him from pulling me out of my chair and causing more problems. So doing this allowed me to also prepare my own body in case he did react. So that was the perfect time to be able to offer a correction of, don't do that again. That's another way. I had another solution to how I learned to solve the communication problem. They kind of molded together.